are going to go ahead and trim these briskets up and get them prepared for the cook in the morning. We're going to go ahead and season them up and do all of that. And Mr. Kevin here is going to show you the proper way to trim for competition a brisket. We got two different briskets here. They're both USDA Choice. One's 15 pounds, the other one's what, 9 pounds, something like that?
Something like that.
But the process is going to be the same for both of them, so if you happen to see two different sized briskets, that's fine. Don't worry about it. The process is the same. And we're going to go ahead and show you how to do that. Mr. Kevin's going to take the lead, and he's going to show you how to properly trim one.
Okay, well, obviously first we need to get it out of our package.
That point on that brisket is freaking huge.
It is massive.
It's going to make some badass burn ends. If I decide to use that point off of that brisket for burn ends, we'll just cut it off after it's cooked and do them the easy way.
Alright, so this right here, this gnarly piece of fat, it needs to go. So just making sure you use a sharp knife. We just follow the fat line down. Try to stay out of the meat as much as possible because we want to make sure we keep as much meat as we can because it's so freaking expensive nowadays. So,
and that right there, hold it up for the camera. See that right there? That's puppy dog meat or sausage or anything you want to
cut it up, put it in your beans.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. It's still good flavoring, but we don't want this for our actual plating for an actual competition.
Yeah, nobody wants to eat that except the puppy dogs.
So we just want to take and clean any of this loose up off. And we want to clean up the edges and everything.
This is where it helps to have a sharp knife. If you look at those cuts, you can see that he's barely getting into the meat. He has obviously done this before. One of the easiest way to do it is to take your knife, grab a hold of the fat, pull it up, take your knife till you just barely see the red of the meat, and then cut parallel and pull as you go.
Alright, we could spend all night long cleaning this up to where it would be perfectly flat and smooth. So,
alright, we're live.
We've talked about it. We're not going to take all this silver skin off. We really don't see a need in it. It's not really going to affect anything. We're going to now look at the fat cap. And boy, look at how... Yeah, well ladies, we're not going to talk about this part right now. Y'all don't know where I live, so I can get away with saying that. So, we're just going to take and run our blade, and we're just trying to take just the top part off. We're not trying to get into the meat because we want to leave us a fat cap, but we don't want it to be a giant, gnarly, thick fat cap.
Typically looking between an 1/8 inch and a 1/4 inch, right?
So, yeah, we're just barely looking to cut just barely right across the top of the meat without actually getting into it. Like that piece, we just barely grazed the meat, and that's just a little too close, but that happens. I've been doing this for many years now, and well, it takes a lot of time to really trim that close, and well, we're not trying to spend all the time in the world doing this. Oops, that's a little close again. Pull it out some.
It's okay. This brisket's got plenty of fat on it, and all that loose, soft fat that will render off and add flavor.
But y'all can see how we got this nice right here. This is kind of what I'm looking for. I don't want actually touching the meat. I just want to really be able to see the meat through it. And we can see that this is nice and thick right here. So we can see the meat. So we want to clean all this up to where we don't have that much fat for whenever we actually present the meat to the judges, because we want it to look nice, lean, just barely enough fat to really tell that it's there. That way we get good scores.
That's right.
Oh, he's a heavy dude. Just, oh, listen to that thump.
And look at that bend too. This brisket's already jiggling.
Just look at that.
We haven't even cooked it yet. This is going to be good. It's already got that jello jiggle.
But I'm just barely running my knife across the top, just trying to graze the fat off. I'm not actually trying to cut.
Alright, we're going to process if I'm going to keep it or not.
Alright. Okay, so for presentation purposes, we wanted to make sure this fits in our box nice and evenly. And here's our box right here. As we can tell, the brisket is actually wider than the actual box.
Not going to fit.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take this shish kebab skewer and we're going to use it to measure the distance we have. We're going to cut it to fit. Y'all didn't see me drop that on the floor, okay? Don't tell OSHA.
Who's OSHA? Never heard of her.
So, still a little bit too big. Cut it down. Didn't drop that on the floor again, I promise. Alright, so we got us a nice good fit right there.
Here, grab it. Let me do it. Your hand's in the way. Okay.
So, we're going to take and move our box back out of the way, and we can see that these edges are really gnarly looking. Like, do you really want to eat that? No, I didn't think so. How about that? That don't look near as bad as this.
No.
So we're going to take and lay our stick across. We have this little piece right here that we're going to go ahead and just brutalize it. And we're going to set this piece to the side, and it's going to become burnt ends. But we don't want to cook our pieces like this because it would cook unevenly and we wouldn't be able to get a rub thoroughly through there. So we're just going to go ahead and clean this up.
Yeah, and these pieces of actual meat that we're trimming off, we're not throwing those away. They're for the most part, good meat. We're just doing this for presentation. So we are going to cook this separate, and maybe you can call it pitmaster privilege.
So we can see we have just surface skin fat on this. So this is still a perfectly good piece of meat, but we'll take and we'll cut it up, and we'll make burnt ends out of it.
Beautiful.
So And right here we can see this is the point up here. This is a flat. The flat's the side that has the fat cap on it. If I can turn this heavy sucker back around, this is our point right here. This piece right here you can see is our point. The other piece is our fat cap. I'm sorry if I screwed that up.
No, you got it right.
So what we're going to do is tomorrow, about 7 hours into this cook for this bad boy, we're going to take him off the smoker, and we're going to take and push our hands right here, and you can see this fat that we have in between the two. It's going to become really moist, and we'll be able to just slide this whole thing right off. And then we'll take and use a point, and we'll chop it up with cuts going across the grain to make nuggets of beef that we can get smoky on all sides. That way it's like having a little brisket bite that's just big enough to go into your mouth. It's just so wonderful.
Perfect.
So, alright, now that we've got this cleaned up, what we want to do is make sure our brisket's nice and flat.
That's not the right one.
No. We found our measuring stick, and we're going to take and go right straight down the side. We're going to set that piece over for our burnt ends. And now that we have this beautiful edge,
look at that.
You can see where our point and our flat separate at. See how it just goes right like that? It's beautiful.
And all that will render out at about the time frame that he was telling you about it just a minute ago. That's when he was saying he was going to take his hand and just slide that point off.
And the pieces of brisket that we're going to take from this brisket whenever it's done cooking, the actual pieces is going to be in around this area right here.
Yep.
Because they're going to be cooked where they're not overly smoked. We have a great smoke ring, great taste, flavor, and everything else like that. And most tender cuts of meat is going to come right here in the center because it'll be the last final pieces to actually be cooked.
Bingo.
And so we use our stick and we'll come over here. And we slice back down again. And the reason why we're doing this is A, it fits in our box, and B, with us already cutting it now instead of waiting afterwards, is if we wait until after we cook the brisket, all this stuff, the edges would be raw and wouldn't have the smoke ring around it. By cutting it before, everything will be uniform and presentable to the judges correctly.
Yes.
So we are now done butchering him up. We're going to leave him just like it is, because now he'll sit in the box nice and neatly, because our little measuring stick says that we're pretty much there, and even though he's still slightly larger, he is going to shrink in the smoker.
Some of that's going to shrink down as those connective tissues and that fat renders off.
And cut it.